All right. Welcome back to the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. It is currently 7:47 p.m. And of course, today's date is the 12th of April 2025. How are you doing? Welcome back to the live show. Thank you for tuning in. It is Saturday. How is your Saturday? How is your Saturday evening going? How is your Saturday evening going? All right. With that being said, a lot is still going on. Tariff is still back and forth between the United States and China. And for some reason, a lot of people are saying that increase the tariff on China, especially business heads in the United States. They're saying if you increase the tariff on China more than President Xi would get on a plane to go to Washington, D.C. That's what Kevin O'Leary is saying. However, let us listen to what CNN has to say concerning uh, the Chinese situation back and forth. And, you know, a lot has been going on as well with Taiwan, Taiwan and China, because the United States is Taiwanese um, ally. So China, for some reason, they're saying if America wants a deal, give up Taiwan. And this happened on China social media. This happened on China social media. Listen to what CNN has to say concerning this whole debacle. Okay. Because I think it's a debacle. Like, what do you mean give up Taiwan? Are they trying to take over Taiwan or what?
All right, Fareed Zakaria is out front now, the host of Fareed Zakaria GPS. So, Fareed, while Will was reporting, and Will and I on the show together so many times, and most of his reports go to Bars and Tone in China. Most of the time, they censor them. They did not censor this. A report about a potential invasion of Taiwan, beginning with a U.S. general saying that they are not practicing, that they are literally rehearsing, that these aren't drills. And they don't censor it. What is really at stake here tonight?
These are the highest stakes, and the Trump administration has badly bungled this. The greatest deterrent to a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, which would send, seismic ripples through the world economy, through the international political system, the greatest deterrent was not any weapon we had. It was the fear that China had that they would be decoupled from the American economy, the economy with which they had, for the last 40 years, built a deep interdependent relationship. Trump has fired that gun pointlessly, without a plan, without a strategy. As far as I can tell, that the tariffs on China were raised to 145% simply because he wanted to save face. He was backtracking and flip-flopping on all the other tariffs, so he needed to turn China into his punching bag. But because of that, what he has done is play into China's hardliners' hands. They have been waiting for this decoupling. They practiced it during COVID. They practiced it during the Shanghai lockdown. And now what they're going to say is, look, if we go into Taiwan, what do we have to lose? We've already been cut off from the American market.
I mean, it is stunning to
you have
consider
more
that
to
this
lose.
may be where this goes. You talk about the path from tariffs to war, a precipitous one. In China, I want to just show this. Will Ripley, showed that post that the Foreign Ministry recently posted on X. So this post, Fareed, has now 13 million views. So what it's of is the former leader Mao Zedong speaking during the Korean War era. Now that is the last time, the Korean War, when China and America were actually at physical war, clashing on a battlefield, right? That's being posted now. And he says, in part, Mao, no matter how long this war lasts, we will never yield. And that is trending now in China. I know this feeds into what you're talking about, but the symbolism here is so culturally significant.
The beginning of China's modern history that every school child is taught in history books is that China was forced and humiliated by Western powers, including the United States, in the 19th century, and had to back down and had to accept humiliation and a kind of neo-colonial arrangement with the foreign powers. And the message of Chinese history is never yield like that again. We will never allow ourselves to be put in a position like that. Look, and the Chinese have a fairly strong hand. A lot of the things the United States imports from China, precursors to chemical, pharmacy, drugs, chemicals, minerals. These are all core things, computer chips. I think I saw one number that said 60% of the chips we import are Chinese chips. We need that stuff. It's not going to be easy to find it somewhere else. You can't find rare earth all over the world. The Chinese, on the other hand, a lot of what they get from us, agriculture, soybeans, things like that, they can get from elsewhere. And most importantly, don't forget, China is a dictatorship. Xi Jinping doesn't have to worry about public opinion in quite the same way that Donald Trump has to worry about it.
No, you also just came out with an op-ed, Freed, and you talk about the tariffs. And in this,
So what? We should just say, you know what, China, do what you like. Do what you like, okay? Because we're scared that you're going to win. Okay, we're going to do what you want, China. That's what these folks are saying we should do.
you write about your own context on it, growing up in India, a country obviously riddled with tariffs and where, I mean, no business could survive of any size. It was all about what kind of government handout you were getting or who, you were. It was corruption. You go on to say, when I got to America, I was thrilled to see that most businesses went about their work with little care as to who was in the White House. But now I watch tech pioneers give interviews slavishly extolling Trump's genius, and Wall Street titans race to post North Korea-style congratulations to the president for his brilliance in rescuing the economy from his own actions. And I wonder, what country am I living in? How significant is this moment for you, Fareed, as you see this?
It's a very sad moment, honestly, because to me, as a kid coming to America, America was the city on the hill, the shining example of how a modern economy should work. You have a market, you have rules, you have laws, everybody plays by them. It doesn't matter whether you know the prime minister, the president, a senator. That wasn't important. What was important was the merit. Did you have a good product? Could you sell it to people? And now when you look at the orgy of corruption that is going to be unleashed, we have studies already from the first Trump term. Firms that gave money to Republicans got more exemptions than firms that gave money to Democrats. Already you have Vietnam saying we're gonna expedite the Trump organization's project. Real estate projects are being signed in 19 countries with the Trump organization right now. Yep. All of it says to you that this is an economy where political favor, knowing people, all that has become the key, not the market. Which was the glory of the American economy.
All right, Fareed, thank you very much. And I just want to show everyone what is.
The fact is, do I want a war with China? Absolutely not. Nobody wants a war with China. America doesn't even want a war with China. Matter of fact, Trump doesn't want a war with China. However, if we don't want fair trade deals, then why did over 70 million plus people voted for Trump saying, you know what, we want fair trade deals? Nobody's going to war. Look, Trump is a master negotiator. Remember when Kim Jong-un of North Korea said, you know what, they were going to go to war with the United States. And Trump and Kim Jong-un started saying, I got a big button on my desk, using the nuclear word and all that stuff. It's not going to happen. Now, I'm not going to say it's not going to happen. However, I believe that this can actually come
on screen
back
right
home
now in China.
And a negotiation, a deal can come into fruition, because it's like some people are saying this may escalate into being outright war. I do not believe that. I think Trump and Xi would come together, China and the United States would come together and figure this out. This is what I believe.
As this report aired, as I said, this is just when Fareed was talking about Mao Zedong. When we had that particular part of the conversation, it went to bars, Fareed. The rest of the conversation, Will Ripley's report, all of that, they did not censor. I say that just to emphasize the closeness with which they are watching this and making these decisions. So the part about invading Taiwan, they obviously wanted that to go out there. Now it was censored, obviously, during the Mao Zedong comments.
Talking about they would invade Taiwan. What, the United States would just sit down, watch China invade Taiwan? Come on, man. Y'all support yours, okay? Support the United States, support Trump. I don't know what y'all talking about.
Wall Street really being rocked here as they're watching what is happening in this trade war between the U.S. and China. Many concerns as we see this escalating trade war. This is a top investor writing in a new report. In the last few days, we have had many conversations with macro fund managers, and their concern is that the White House is not acting rationally, but rather on ideology. Those words dropping as the White House just moments ago had this to say about the escalating trade war with China.
The president, as I said from the podium just a few days ago when I was up here, would be gracious if China intends to make a deal with the United States. If China continues to retaliate, it's not good for China. But the president has made it very clear he's open to a deal with China.
Why is he optimistic that China's going to make a deal or wants to make a deal if they're not talking? Where's that optimism come from?
He's optimistic.
The White House not giving much more than just the president is optimistic. The basis for that still unclear. Here is where the trade war stands right now. 145 going up against 125. These are the tariffs between the world's two biggest economies.
And here's another number, 4,700 or about $400 per month. That is how much more money Yale's now estimating, the Yale Budget Lab.
And that's Yale, okay? The University of Yale. So Yale is telling the United States, you guys are going to be spending 4,000 plus, which is 4,700 a year surplus. Additionally, you're going to have that extra on whatever you were spending yearly, which was last year, 2 years ago, whatever time. But it's like, okay, Yale, really? I mean, how y'all know the exact number? Yale?
That President Trump's tariffs are going to cost average households each year. And with just hours left in trading, the Dow right now up. You're seeing that swing here going into the afternoon, up almost 650 points. But it was up and down there throughout earlier in the day. With us now, we have CNN business editor at large, Richard Quest. We have CNN chief national security analyst, Jim Sciutto, as well. Richard, a key economic gauge, the consumer sentiment now at its second lowest level on record, going back to 1952. Why?
We shouldn't be surprised with all that's coming out and all the worries about tariffs. It's not just that, it's the complexity of everything else as well. The changes within the federal government, the worries about job losses, the worries about a slowing economy, higher inflation, and eventually you get these what's known as soft data. They're surveys like the Michigan survey, consumer sentiment, and it's a really worrying number because at some point these sentiment surveys feed into hard data of real consumer spending. And we know this from history and precedent. That's what happens. So when we see a number as bad as this one, it is only a matter of time, unless anything else changes that would suddenly make people more cheerful. Look at that chart. I mean, just look at it. Unless people suddenly become more cheerful, why would this not translate into spending? You see, that consumer lab, the lab from Yale, that number of 4,700, that is providing you don't start substituting goods. In other words, pre-substitution, if we just continue as we are now. But of course, people will start to substitute. They will find other goods. And as the Christmas Tree Association said a moment or two ago, it's going to be very difficult to find substitution of many things that we currently get from China.
Yeah, you'll be surprised just how much we get exclusively from China. And Jim, I'm really curious to get your perspective on the White House's handling of this situation. Not so much the tariffs that have been announced, but this reporting that the White House, that officials have made clear to Beijing that they want Xi to ask for a call with Trump. Yeah. Trump hasn't reached out directly. What do you make of that approach?
And the White House saying they want Xi to reach out for. Can you get any more high school in matters of state?
He's got to call me, Jim.
Yeah, and listen, what's interesting is, as I was reporting yesterday, the Chinese impression is that they are willing to at least negotiate, not necessarily on Donald Trump's terms, but to talk. But their impression is that the U.S. has not opened channels and not made an effort to open up channels to allow that. So now you have the U.S. president say, well, I'm not going to open those channels. China has to open them first. It's kind of ridiculous at the end of the day, because you are playing with the interests of American consumers, Chinese consumers, et cetera. The other point I would make about China's reaction today in not quite meeting the U.S. tariffs, 145% U.S., China goes to 125. And in Xi's statement, he says, we're going to 125 in response. That's as high as we're going because this is getting a little ridiculous, right? Mm-hmm. And that's both a signal to say we're not going to get caught up in this tit for tat to the degree that the president is, but it's also an opening to say, okay, we're capping this for now, and that perhaps offers a way forward that we could begin talking about how to bring these down.
You've lived in China. Mm-hmm. You've covered China for some time now. As we're looking at this question of who's going to blink first, with two very different political systems, what is your gauge on this?
Well, different systems, listen, one's a democracy, one is not. One's a single-party state, very much not a democracy. But China does have politics, and Chinese leaders do not want to be seen, we were talking about this yesterday, I believe, do not want to be seen as capitulating to America. That is not good politics for a Chinese leader. Long colonial history to go back into, we could talk for hours, but they don't want to be seen as kowtowing to the West here. So the browbeating is not a great diplomatic strategy. And we've seen that in the past as well. Now, we should say, Donald Trump mixes in with the tariff browbeating some comments about how good a friend he is with Xi. But we'll see if the door has been closed for now, or if there's a little bit of an opening and perhaps they start opening those channels.
Richard, it's interesting to explore the power that the EU has now, because they can tip the scales in terms of how impactful these tariffs will be for either nation, depending on where negotiations land.
So you've got the Spanish Prime Minister in Beijing. You've got the EU basically saying, well, we're going to start looking at other markets. I think this will most certainly give a huge boost to China-EU relations to try and complete some form of trade agreement, because everybody is now wanting to circumnavigate the United States. Now, you can't up to a point. There are certain things, there are certain inalienable bonds of trade between the EU and the US. That doesn't mean to say you can't reduce it, your reliance. And just as much as the US is now saying, we want to reduce our reliance on China, we want to make sure we are no longer strategically dependent, the EU absolutely is saying, is there a deal to be done with Brazil and Mercosur? Is there a deal to be done with ASEAN, a stronger one? Jim, can I just ask Jim, do you think, sorry guys, but do you think that the Xi statement is actually a sort of not a white flag, but just a sort of an olive branch that both sides can now take to move forward?
I think it has two sides to it. One, it's a bit of a message to the U.S. to say, this is silly. This is getting silly. We're not going to play this game of chicken. But Xi Jinping, also by not going right up to the level of U.S. tariffs, I think one can look at that as a small opening for discussions. Both of them want to talk. Now the question is, I suppose, who picks up the phone first? That's where we are.
You see, Boris Brianna, that's what happens when you get two anchors who are also your guests. We'll just hijack the whole thing.
He did it, by the way, just so you know. I only answered.
No objections here over who calls who first.
Look, I support the tariff that Trump is literally placing on China. Why? Because we need to bring back jobs to the United States. Okay, I get it. It's cheaper. It's much more affordable in China. However, in the next 10, 20 years, if we keep going this way, keep sourcing out to China, keep sourcing out to China, keep on sourcing out to China, This will affect the United States, and it may become irreversible for our kids. Think about it. So what Trump is doing now is actually essential. But he's the bad guy because he has the balls to do it. He has the balls to tariff China. Oh, all great China. He has the balls to do it. Obama could have done this. Joe Biden definitely could have done this. But of course, he didn't. He cleaned up California, Los Angeles, or was it San Diego? He cleaned up California when she was coming to California. He didn't tariff China. So, with that being said, let's be patient. This week is going to be a very busy week for the United States and China, for sure, before Easter. Hope a deal is made before Easter. All right, listen to OG Trump here in the White House.
What was happening to us on trade, not only with, if you look at it, not only with China, but China was by far the biggest abuser in history, and others also, but somebody had to do it. They had to stop because it was not sustainable. Last year, China made $1 trillion off trade with the United States. That's not right. And now I've reversed it. It's for a short period of time, but we made $2 billion. We're making now $2 billion a day. And somebody had to do it.
$2 billion a day,
Roger actually said it. Charles Schwab was here a little while ago, one of the great financial people, and he said he's been waiting for 40 years for somebody to do what I did over the last month. And if you didn't do it, you wouldn't have a country. It wouldn't be sustainable. So I'm honored to have done it. And, look, nothing's over yet, but we have a tremendous amount of spirit from other countries, including China. China wants to make a deal. They just don't know how quite to go about it. It's one of those things they don't know how quite. They're proud
China.
people. And
Daniel,
Xi's a
China.
proud man. I know him very well, and they don't know quite how to go about it, but they'll figure it out. They're in the process of figuring it out, but they want to make a deal.
Trump said they're
And
proud.
we have many other countries, as you know, many more than 75, and they all want to come, and they want to come here, or they'll go to Commerce, or they'll go to Treasury. We have our great senators here and congressmen. They'll call John, they'll do somebody, they'll go through somebody, but they're all calling, how do we do this? They all want to make a deal. Somebody had to do what we did, and I did a 90-day pause for the people that didn't retaliate, because I told them if you retaliate, we're going to double it. And that's what I did with China, because they did retaliate. So we'll see how it all works out. I think it's going to work out amazing. I think that our country is going to be at the end of a year or shorter, but I think we're going to have something that nobody would have dreamt possible. A man like Roger Penske, I don't want to get him in trouble with China, so I won't, but he would know that someday you have to cut the bow and you have to do what you have to do, right, Roger? And that's what I did, and I'm very happy to have done it.
Mr. President, was there anyone the Prime Minister of Greece just told Breitbart's Matt Boyle that he thinks absolutely the European Union and the United States could work out a trade deal that's win-win and, quote, mutually beneficial to both sides. What do you think about the Prime Minister's comments, and do you think a deal could be struck with the European Union?
First of all, I know him. He's a good man, and I appreciate his comments. Yeah, a deal could be made with every one of them. A deal's going to be made with China. A deal's going to be made with every one of them. And there'll be fair deals. I just want fair. They will be fair deals for everybody. But they weren't fair to the United States. They were sucking us dry. And
You're sucking us dry.
Can't do that. We have $36 trillion of debt for a reason. We don't have it there for fun. They have it for a reason. And people took advantage of our country, and they ripped us off for decades. I've been thinking about this for decades. If you ever saw me on television, I was young like these guys. And it was a good old days, I'll tell you, Roger. But I was like these guys, young, and I was talking about it. Nothing changed, and nothing was done about it. Then I did it. In my first term, I did it, and did it well. We took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China and others, and I started the process, but then we had to fix up from the COVID mess caused by China. We had to fix up from that, and we did a good job of doing it. And when we handed back the reins after a rigged election, and when we handed back the reins, the stock market was higher than it was before COVID coming in. So, you know, we did a great job, but we didn't have time to do the big thing, which we're doing now. And it's, you know, it's like a patient is sick, you have to do surgery. Patient is very, very sick. And Joe Biden handed us over a country that was in very serious trouble, economically and in every other way. They let China run away with things. They let other countries run away with things. And maybe worst of all, in a certain way, is what they did at the border. We had people pouring into our country by the millions. Many of them were murderers and drug lords and thieves and people from prisons from all over the world. And there were people from mental institutions, insane asylums. They were taking their mentally insane and they were dumping them into our country. And I'll tell you, Tom Homan and Kristi Noem are doing a fantastic job in removing them. And now the courts, the Supreme Court just gave us numerous good rulings where we have to be able to get them out. You had other judges trying to take over the system. And think of it, they take over, they want these people coming back, Tren de Aragua from Venezuela, the Venezuela jails that cut off the fingers of a man in Colorado. They cut off his fingers because he called the police looking for help. They said, "Did you call the police?" He said, "Yes, I did." "Put your hand down," and they cut off the fingers. This is what they want to bring these people back now. And I want to thank the president of El Salvador for the job he's done, because that is, that's the way it has to be done. It's too bad. Yeah, please.
Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, they've been talking about tariffs for decades. How come when these Democrat elites want tariffs, everything's hunky-dory, but when President Trump wants tariffs, all hell breaks loose? Do you see this double standard?
I love this guy, whoever the hell that is. That's really nice. I appreciate that question. No, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, everybody knew you had to do it, but they never had the guts to do it. It does take guts. It even takes guts for our country to go through it. That's why I say be cool. They were saying about, see, just be cool. It's going to work out. It's going to work out, and it's working out. I can tell you, working out maybe faster.
One thing I can say is, in life, you got to ride through, man. You got to be cool. See what he said? He said, y'all be cool, man. Let me cook. Let me cook. Let me do the cooking. Y'all be cool with it. But, I mean, like he said, they were getting a little yippy. They got a little yippy. So we pulled back for 90 days. They got a little yippee, y'all.
Than I thought, but I said it's, you know, it's going to take a little conditioning. It's a transition to, it's really, I think it's a transition to greatness. It's going to be greatness. Our country is going to be, there'll be nothing like it, and people investing in our country, they're going to do better than they've ever done before. We have more car manufacturers, Roger, coming into our country now. Speaking of cars. We've never seen anything like it. And they're coming in because of the election, but they're coming in because of the tariffs, because they don't want to pay 25 or 50 or whatever it may be. They don't want to pay that. They can't pay that. We had 3 cancellations in Mexico, building a plant. They're all coming into the United States. Canada, they're coming in. From China, they're coming in from everywhere. And that's just cars. We have chip makers coming. We're the biggest chip maker in the world from Taiwan, coming in, spending $3 billion to build plants, and mostly a big plant. This is a hell of a plant when you spend the kind of money that they're going to go $200 to $300 billion, not million. You know, you'd say million would be the right number. It's not. $200 to $300 billion. Think of that, $300 billion. If you look at Apple is going to spend $500 billion building a plant. They wouldn't be doing that if I didn't do this. They'd just keep building them in China. And that's unsustainable. It's not a pleasant thing to do, but I appreciate the question. And, you know, interestingly, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, Crazy Nancy, they've wanted to do this for years, but they never had a president that had the guts to do it, because it does take guts, believe me.
Was it the bond markets that persuaded you to reverse course?
I was watching the bond market. The bond market is very tricky. I was watching it, but if you look at it now, it's beautiful. The bond market right now is beautiful. But yeah, I saw last night where people were getting a little queasy. I think everything had. Well, the big move wasn't what I did today. The big move was what I did on Liberation Day. We had Liberation Day in America. We're liberated from all of the horrible deals that were made, all of the horrible trade deals that were made. And I was helped by people just like this, senator, congressman, and friends, right? And we had great help in the Senate. Our Republican senators have been amazing. They stood tall. And likewise in the House. And John Thune has done an amazing job. Barrasso has done an amazing job. I can't think of a senator, really. We had tremendous support. We got a bill passed the other day with almost unanimous support in the Senate. And I think we're going to get that in the House, too. And I have to tell you that Mike Johnson is a great speaker. He's done a fantastic job. We had a majority of 1. Now we have a majority of 7. And you don't realize how big 7 is until you have a majority of 1. 7 sounds like so much. But we're doing well. But Mike Johnson and John Thune have done a really great job.
Mr. President, was there anyone who influenced your decision? Did you speak with anyone? You know, Jamie Dimon? Did you speak with anyone?
Well, I watched Jamie Dimon on Maria Bartiromo's show this morning, and he was very good. He said that actually made the statement to effect that something had to be done with the tariffs and trade. He said that. He said, look, at some point, but he said something has to be done with tariffs and trade. He understood it. He's very smart and very a genius financially. He's done a fantastic job at the bank. And he knows that. Everybody knows that. Anybody that's even a little bit smart knows it. It wasn't sustainable what was happening. Somebody had to pull the trigger. I was willing to pull the trigger. This should have been done long ago. Just like Biden should have stopped the border long ago. I mean, allowed 21 million people plus into our country, many of whom should never have been allowed out of prisons and jails. They came out of prisons and jails from all over the world. And now we're getting them out, bringing them back to their countries. But it's should have never been done. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Sir, would you consider exempting some U.S. companies, maybe some larger companies who have been hit hard in the markets the last few days during this 90 days?
As time goes by, we're going to take a look at it. There are some that have been hard. There are some that, by the nature of the company, get hit a little bit harder, and we'll take a look at that. Yeah.
How will you determine it in the next 90 days?
Just instinctively, more than anything else. I mean, you almost can't take a pencil to paper. It's really more of an instinct, I think, than anything else.
What's your credibility like? Because you said that these tariffs would go into effect on Monday. You said no pause. And today there is a pause. So how can people believe your words today?
It's not a question of that. You have to have flexibility. I could say, here's a wall, and I'm going to go through that wall. I'm going to go through it no matter what. And keep going, and you can't go through the wall. Sometimes you have to be able to go under the wall, around the wall, or over the wall. These guys know that better than anybody, right? You got to go around them sometimes. You're not going to go through them. So I consider, I think in financial markets, because they change. Look how much it changed today. We went from, pretty moderate today, but over the last few days it looked pretty glum, to, I guess they say it was the biggest day in financial history. That's a pretty big change. And I think the word would be flexible. You have to be flexible. Like he's asking the question about some companies. Some companies, through no fault of their own, they happen to be in an industry that is more affected by these things than others. You have to be able to show a little flexibility. And I'm able to do that. I'm going to say hello to these champions because they are great champions. I got to say hello.
To avoid more escalation.
That's very story.
So if you guys want to take your polls down, yes.
OG status. At least He's focused on America first. He's had so many American products in the White House. Shout out to the OG, man. You just got to give him his flowers. Anyway, Kevin O'Leary is saying that the United States should charge 400% tariff on China. What is going on? Check this out. Mr. Wonderful.
Wild week, ups and downs there on Wall Street. We all watched it happen, but ultimately at the end of the week, stocks closing off higher at the weekend. Does that help my next guest's argument to hit China even harder? O'Leary Ventures chairman and Shark Tank investor Kevin O'Leary, a familiar face here with me now. Sir, thanks for giving us a little bit of your time here as we're kicking off Saturday morning. I want to get your thoughts. It was a wild week. And now it seems like there's a lot of negotiating going on with countries around the world. But we're playing pretty tough with China right now. Your thoughts?
Because China is not in the same group as the others. I mean, you can think about a circle of friendship with the EU, England, which is not part of the EU, Switzerland, and all the other countries mentioned, and of course, Canada, Mexico. You can see that coming together with some kind of a reciprocal tariff, and I think we're well on the way there. But China's a completely different story. The problem with China is we have some real issues with them since 2000 when they came into the World Trade Organization. They've never complied by any of the rules. There are thousands of complaints registered at the WTO, and they've never been adjudicated, never been resolved. Now, when I do business in China, I can't use their court system, and yet they can use ours. They can actually sue me here with knockoff products that they stole the IP from. And so we've got a really imbalanced playing field. It's not a level playing field at all. Even worse than that, I'm just giving you a list of litany that has to be resolved in addition to trade tariffs. Trade tariffs are a sideshow in China. They get to use our capital markets, the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ. They list companies that are not compliant with general accounting principles. You don't even get a real share. You get a shadow share, and they don't provide the right financial statements, and they're not compliant. And they're, by the law, they should be getting delisted. And I believe they will be soon because there's a new sheriff in town. Paul Atkins just got approval to run the SEC, and he's going to be a China hawk, I believe. So all of this stuff has to get resolved, and that's why my view is, why don't we just ratchet it up? Why mess around with these 25% a week increases? Just go to 400%. Shut down a complete trade with China and start squeezing them until they come to the table.
Yeah, we know that China's a big rule breaker, absolutely, on the global stage, particularly on finances. But at the same time, they also make a lot of things. We're buying a lot of things. A lot of those Chinese goods coming into America. There are businesses that are dependent on that trade to a certain extent, and consumers buy a lot of those goods. So what does that all mean as this continues to play out?
Well, you're 100% right. The largest consumer market on earth, almost 40%, is the United States of America. In the U.S., 26.1% of world GDP. My point is they can't do without us. If they don't have the ability to sell this stuff you're talking about and make it in the factories and employ millions of people, those people become unemployed. And when you're let's call the Supreme Leader what he is. He can't keep his job. He doesn't have to face any votes. But if people can't eat and they're in the streets rioting, his job's over. Xi knows this. And so it's mutual destruction if it's a long-term situation, but it won't be long-term. You might as well come to the table, I say to Xi, but it's not just going to be on tariffs. You got to clean up your act with the WTO and access to your courts and access to your markets. If you want to play with the big boys in the G7, it's got to be reciprocal. And that's what's on the table. That's what I'm advocating for. You know, I want to point out for American entrepreneurship, thousands and even millions of businesses over the last 20 years. When you innovate in America and you get an investor and you create something unique and it's a hit product and it hits 5 million in sales, that's the moment it gets knocked off in China, because the Chinese never paid for any of the R&D. They don't have to recoup it. They flood the U.S. market with the knockoff and sometimes wipe out the original American company with the American jobs. There's nothing okay about that. And that's because we don't make them pay for IP theft. There's got to be a consequence. You can't keep doing that. And I'm done with it. And I'm just one of millions of investors who actually like the Chinese people. I want to do business in China. I want to sell there. But enough of this stealing the IP. I want a reciprocal playing field.
I want to get your reaction to this. This is what China has to say about it, specifically the Chinese embassy in the U.S. They say that even in the United States imposes these higher tariffs, so they're acknowledging this will happen. It would no longer make economic sense and ultimately go down as a joke in world economic history. They say that given it's already impossible for the Chinese market to accept U.S. imports at the current tariff level, if the United States imposes further tariffs on Chinese products, China will ignore it. They go on to say that China will take firm countermeasures. They're vowing to fight to the end, if you will. What do you make of that, the Customs Tariff Commission of the State Council?
Sounds like a beginning of a negotiation to me. I mean, it's just rhetoric. It's noise. But I can guarantee you right now within the Chinese Communist Party, there's people talking about this. There's, I'm sure, a little bit of dissension. This is not good for China. And when you think about the situation, the Chinese economy is much weaker than the American economy. They had a major real estate correction with billions of dollars of debt at stake, even trillions. They've got problems, and they may have to devalue their currency, which is a tax on Europe and the United States. It's not all good over there. And so I think further head squeezing is necessary. And I don't care. But my whole point is,
or the head squeezing is necessary.
Go to a crazy rate to signal that you're not going to mess around. I like 400. It kind of has a nice ring to it. And then just say, look, we're going to shut down trade, and all those people in your factories that you got to keep employed, they're probably getting a little nervous. And I think it's time for you to meet the president wherever. They can fly to any city, Riyadh, Geneva, come to Washington, whatever it is, and start these negotiations. And when that happens, the markets are going to stabilize. It's going to get worked out. So everybody should just chillax and wait for this to happen, because it's going to.
Be cool, as some people might say. Kevin O'Leary, thank you very, very much.
Mr. Wonderful says be cool. Kevin O'Leary says be cool. However, Kevin O'Leary is probably a billionaire, ladies and gentlemen. So the regular, everyday American, how are we taking these tariffs? People who voted for Trump say they're going to weather the storm because they are willing to see made in America rather than seeing made in China. Man, don't you think that's actually sensible to support your country, to want to have goods and services made in your country? It might take a long time, but that is a good investment, to be able to see more made in America goods sold to Americans. All right, check out the OG on Air Force One.
Hello, everybody. Mr. President, just got back from Walter Reed. Land with you. I think well. Every test you can imagine. I was there for a long time. The yearly physical. And I think I did well. I think they're releasing the report on Sunday. Doctors, highly respected doctors, great place, great, amazing place actually.
Did they give you any suggestions or advice on anything you need to change up?
A little bit, but overall I think I felt I was in very good shape. Good heart, a good soul, very good soul. And I wanted to be a little different than Biden. I took a cognitive test, and I don't know what to tell you other than I got every answer right. I took just a lot of different tests having to do with the heart, having to do with other things, and I think you'll find that they're going to release the report on Sunday. I think you'll find it very good.
Can you tell us about the cognitive test? Is that man, woman, person, camera, TV?
It's I think it's a pretty well-known test. Whatever it is, I got it all right, as I've done about 4 times before. And I've taken the cognitive test, I think, 4 times, and I've got nothing wrong. That's what the American people want, right? Biden refused to take it. Kamala refused to take it. I think most of them refused to take it, but I don't refuse to take it.
Biden refused to take it. Kamala refused to take it. But I'm not refusing to take it. OG, legendary, 45th, 47th.
What else?
Can I ask you about the way you thought of the markets today and this week?
Which one?
The markets this week and the reaction.
I think the markets were solid today. I think people are saying we're in great shape. We're making a lot of money as a country now for the first time in a long time. We were losing billions of dollars a day, and now we're making billions of dollars a day. It's a big difference. And we then brought it down to 10%. And so that made it a little bit less, but I did that because I wanted to be fair to other people, to other countries.
Is it up to President Xi to pick up the phone? Where to take
I guess so. Whatever it is, we have a lot of countries, not just China. But whatever it is, I think we're in a very good position. We're doing well. We have a lot of things happening. A lot of new companies are coming on board because of the tariffs and because of the November 5th election.
How does the administration, how do you plan to respond to the Supreme Court ruling and the other courts about the gentleman who was from Maryland who was put in the El Salvador prison?
Is that the one that was not Tren de Aragua, but he was MS-13?
Just the one that they've said needs to come back.
No, but was he MS-13? Because I only know by that. I mean, I don't know which one, but if the Supreme Court said bring somebody back, I would do that. I respect the Supreme Court.
And the lower court judge as well. He's been asking for daily updates.
I'm not talking about the lower court. I have great respect for the Supreme Court. So I'm not totally well versed as to the specific case, but if they said to bring him back, I would tell them to bring him back.
Tell us a little bit about your negotiations, how they're going with other countries aside from China. It sounds like you were talking to some before you left for both.
We're talking to a lot of countries, and ultimately, we pretty much can do what we want to do, but we want to be fair. We can set the tariff, and they can choose not to deal with us, or they can choose to pay it, and that's where we are. We can set the tariff, or we can do it a number of different ways, but that seems to be appropriate. And they can pay it, or negotiate it, or they can not pay it. They can just say we can't do business with them. If they think it's too high, they don't have to do business with us. But I don't think anybody would think that.
Is 10% the floor, Mr. President?
Pretty close, yeah, I would say.
Pretty close.
There could be a couple of exceptions for obvious reasons, but I would say 10% is a floor.
Are you wanting to get to the table with China, or are you comfortable with the tariffs with where they're at right now?
I mean, honestly, I'm very comfortable now, but I've always gotten along well with President Xi. We had a good relationship, very good, and I think something positive is going to come out of that.
Are you done with that level? Their last response, I think, brought theirs to 145.
We'll see what happens. I mean, look, China is a very big, great country. It's a very good leader, a very smart leader. It's a different form of leadership. It's a different form of government. But they certainly are big. But, this should have been done. What I've done should have been done by past presidents for many, many years. And they allowed this to happen. You could say that more recently about how do you let people pour into our country like Biden allowed to happen. It's a big focus. We now have the best border we've had ever. But, how do you allow that to happen? Could have been stopped so easily. He didn't need legislation. The expression. Just needed a new president. We have now the best border that we've ever had.
Mr. President.
Okay, yeah, please.
Yes. Who would you like to see win the Masters this Sunday?
Oh, I have so many great guys. They're all friends of mine. You have some great ones. Scotty Scheffler's great. Bryson's great.
Did you see his round
You have
today?
a lot of great ones. Yeah, you have some really great. Justin Rose is they're all friends of mine. But it's going to be a good Masters. Looks like it's going to be a very good Masters. Have some fantastic golfers at the top. So it should be good. The course looks beautiful.
What do you make of the dollar having gone down a little bit after the tariff announcement?
We're the currency of choice. We're always going to be, as long as you have somebody smart. And you know what? If a nation said we're not going to be on the dollar, I would tell you that within about one phone call, they would be back on the dollar. You always have to keep the dollar. No, the dollar is, I think when
phone call, yo.
People understand what we're doing, I think the dollar will go way up. You're talking about the value of the dollar, which is what I'm talking about too. I think the dollar is tremendous. It's going to be stronger than ever.
How are you feeling with the bond market right now, sir? The 10-year has risen.
The bond market's going good. It had a little moment, but I solved that problem very quickly. solved it that well. We had the biggest day in history.
How concerned were you about the bond market? To what extent did that play a role?
It wasn't, a lot of people say, was that, no, it wasn't.
What was it?
I want to put the country in an unbelievable economic position, which is where we should be. And it should have been done many years ago by other presidents, and they didn't do it. They didn't have the courage to do it. And to me, it's not a question of courage. I think we had no choice. But I think it's very obvious what's going to happen. We're very strong. We're making billions of dollars a day. We were losing billions of dollars a day. This is in a period of 2 weeks. We're making billions of dollars a day. China now is losing billions of dollars. I don't want them to lose money, but they're losing billions, and we're making billions. I flipped it. Thank you very much, everybody.
Sir, on Iran, we know that your ultimate goal is to not allow them to have a nuclear weapon. What are your short-term goals for talks this weekend?
Only that. I want them not to have a nuclear weapon. I want Iran to be a wonderful, great, happy country. But they can't have a nuclear weapon. And we're negotiating with them. On Saturday, we have a big meeting with them.
What do you hope to come?
And right now, we have a meeting with President Putin as we speak. There's a meeting going on right now. But with Iran, I want them to flourish, but they can't have a nuclear weapon. Thank you, everybody.
Tomorrow night, USC, can you confirm this, President?
Great transparency for sure. He is on Air Force One after the Walter Reed checkup for his health, and he said he also did the cognitive test that Kamala Harris and, of course, Sleepy Joe refused to do. Anyway, Iran may be getting the boot from the United States. Check this out.
On Saturday, President Trump is set to reopen direct talks with Iran. Listen to what White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt said about that.
When it comes to Iran, the president has reimposed crippling sanctions on the Iranian regime, and he's made it very clear to Iran they have a choice to make. You can strike a deal with the president, you can negotiate, or there will be hell to pay. And as the president said yesterday, if they don't choose to move forward with diplomacy and a deal, which is the direction we do see them headed in, there will be grave consequences.
Grave consequences. Okay. Retired four-star General Jack Keane joining me again here in New York City. Are we on the brink of an attack on Iran? I raised the question because we reported yesterday there are 6 B-2 bombers that have been assembled in Diego Garcia. They carry the bunker-busting bombs that you and I have talked about a lot. Are we getting ready for an attack?
Yeah, I mean, we're absolutely making preparations. I think what the president is very sincere here in trying to get the Iranians to voluntarily dismantle the program. So he's issued them an ultimatum. And what does that really mean? It means the Iranians would have to give up all of their nuclear materials. They'd have to dismantle their facilities that they have, and some of them are 250 feet in the ground with 3 feet walls. And they're also their ballistic missiles as the delivery system. But here's the big catch. We want anywhere, anytime inspections. The Iranians, in their entire history, have never granted that. They let you go to a certain sites, and meanwhile, they have secret sites where they continue their program. It's likely they're not going to put that on the table. We're going to have to insist on it. And then the last thing is by a date certain. So the alternative then, if they don't comply with this, is a strike. So yes, preparations are being made for that. It would likely be an Israeli-led, U.S.-supported strike. The Israelis have great skepticism about the Iranians voluntarily dismantling the program. So does President Trump, but he wants to give it a try. And I think on Saturday we'll start to get a sense of, are they really serious about this? Or are they kind of behaving like Putin is behaving? You know, who's delaying, wants more concessions. The Iranians do want relief from sanctions.
And we've got leverage.
We have
more leverage than we've ever had before.
More leverage in 44 years. Iran is back on their heels. We have an opportunity to finish these guys once and for all for their malign and aggressive behavior and destabilizing the Middle East. That's how far back on their heels they are. We have the leverage.
It's fascinating. All right, next one for you, General. The Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte, he sounded the alarm on China's growing military. He called the build-up of their armed forces staggering. Do you think that we in America are a little naive about China's military power?
Well, I think the previous administration tried to pretend that we still had deterrence.
I mean, I totally agree with the Secretary General. I was on a commission for 22 months that looked at this. Our conclusion simply when we published our report last year that China, Russia, Iran, North Korea represent the most serious and dangerous threat to the United States since World War II. And obviously the major competitor is China. They outpace us, Stuart, in just about every platform there is except submarines. That's the that's the reality.
Rocketry and missiles.
Yeah, you name it, they outpace us, and we're not even close to being able to catch up.
When you say outpace us, I mean,
they
are
have
their
more
weapons
of them.
better, or there are more of them?
They have more of them, and they've caught us in quality in just about most of all of it. It is a staggering military buildup. But here's what we have to do, and we can do this: strengthen Taiwan so that they impose costs themselves, and build up the United States military capability with our allies and partners in the region, and use some imagination. The Ukraine war has showed us that Ukraine defeated the Russian Navy in the Black Sea, and they don't have a Navy. How did they do it? They did it with drones and missiles and imagination. Warfare has changed. These big ships are very vulnerable to missiles. Autonomous vehicles above the sea, autonomous vehicles below the sea, not a few hundred of them, thousands of them can make a difference, and we can do that quickly.
But are we behind in that area?
Yes.
At this moment, we are behind.
Oh, yeah,
autonomous
absolutely.
vehicles above and underneath the sea.
Yes, we're absolutely behind. Behind what our capability is.
How long does it take to catch up?
We can do this in a couple of years with those kind of vehicles, about 4 or 5 years for the total program.
Do you think we've got time? Do you think we've got a couple of years?
Well, here's what President Xi has. We have to go along with what he says. He told his forces to be ready to take Taiwan by force in 27.
Whoa.
So that doesn't mean he's going to pull the trigger. What Xi really wants, he wants to dominate us so much militarily that Taiwan knows that the United States likely can't win this war. So they would capitulate, and then would the United States come to their assistance? Well, if you're going to recognize that this is going to be a catastrophic event, tank the world economy, and the United States may not win in the long run, does the President of the United States make a decision to support, or does he throw the towel in? That's where President Xi's head is. He wants us to throw the towel in because he dominates us so militarily. We don't have to go platform to platform with him, Stuart. What we do have to have is a capability like we had with the Soviet Union. They outnumbered us in everything also, but we had enough to impose cost and for those military leaders to look at and say, this is in doubt whether we could win or not, so they never came. That's what we have to achieve, and we can achieve that.
Got to spend a lot of money to do it, don't we?
Of course, it's going to cost us some money.
A Reagan-style buildup is what.
Well, I mean, we took our money and prioritized other things on the Democratic administrations. We spent trillions on other things. Now we have to do our knitting here a little bit and do some homework and fix what needs to be fixed.
What a pleasure it is to have a military man on the set who knows what he's talking about. It's extraordinary stuff. No wonder you're so popular. Do you know the ratings go up when you're on? They do too.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. It is currently 8:45, and today's it is the 12th of April, 2025. Reporting live from the South, Augusta, Georgia. And of course, you know, the Masters is happening in Augusta, Georgia. Everybody's wondering why Tiger Woods is not playing at the Masters. Well, he's now dating Dawn Jr., Donald Trump's son's ex-wife. So I don't know what's going on right there. But with that being said, trade war looms and tariff keeps going up between China and the United States because China has always been Trump's target from the gate. Here we go.
It's fight night for President Trump. He's heading to UFC 314 tonight while his administration battled with Iran today.
How does he even do this? He plays golf. He goes to UFC. He's enjoying life. He's 79 years old this year, making trade deals with China, Australia, everybody in the world, and he still finds time to actually enjoy himself. How do you operate on the highest level and still have fun with it? Amazing.
Nuclear deal talks with the #1 state sponsor of terror that were, quote, very positive and constructive, with more negotiations set for next week. The meeting comes as the White House continues to trade blows with China over tariffs, while the administration says phones are, quote, ringing off the hook as other countries look to make deals with the United States. Lucas Tomlinson is live at the White House tonight with the latest. Hi, Lucas.
Well, good evening, Alicia. President Trump on his way to the big fight in Miami. If he leaves early, he can catch the last few innings of the Washington Nationals Marlins game down there. Now, here was President Trump aboard Air Force One talking about those tariffs on China.
We're making billions of dollars a day. We were losing billions of dollars a day. This is in a period of 2 weeks. We're making billions of dollars a day. China now is losing billions of dollars. I don't want them to lose money, but they're losing billions and we're making billions. I flipped it.
Now, White House officials say they've heard from dozens of countries trying to negotiate new trade deals. Trump says he's close to some of them. Some have offered concessions. 2 are firing back. Then there's Mexico. No retaliation planned. Now, if you're in the market for a new smartphone, Alicia, or a panel, you're in luck. Late last night, the Trump administration said it would be exempting smartphones, tablets, and other electronics, seen as a win for Apple. Makes a lot of them. Apple CEO Tim Cook personally donated $1 million to Trump's inaugural committee back in January. Now, fresh off talks with Vladimir Putin in Moscow, President Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff just wrapped up talks with Iranian officials in Oman. It's the first time in 10 years the U.S. and Iran have sat down for negotiations. Iran's foreign minister called the talks constructive and promising. We then saw similar language from Witkoff in a White House statement, which said, quote, the discussions were positive and constructive. So there you see there they both use the same word, constructive. Now, Iranian officials say talks will resume next week, presumably in Europe. And in case the negotiations break down, there is the military option. There's a second aircraft carrier strike group now in the Middle East. And those 6 B-2 stealth bombers continue to remain in Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, Alicia.
Okay, Lucas Tomlinson at the White House. Really good to see you. Happy Saturday. Okay, Joey, before we get started here, I do want to bring up something that the Iranian Minister of Foreign Affairs said, saying, quote, both sides, including the Americans, have said that their goal is also to reach an agreement in the shortest possible time. However, that will certainly not be an easy task. I think that's quite the understatement there.
Yeah, I think Trump comes in and it's a different set of rules. I think the biggest headline in all this is that Iran is really facing sitting down with the United States. And that is a political win for President Trump, regardless of where their nuclear program is or isn't or where it's headed. We can talk about the JCPOA and the other 5 countries that are still involved in that, the fact that the United States pulled out of it, and in doing so with President Trump, put much harsher sanctions on Iran. Some of that kind of got lighter under President Biden, and now it's back. Iran knows that their economy isn't doing well. They want a nuclear weapon, they say, to these negotiations to defend themselves, but then they say to the region to destroy Israel. And as long as that's their narrative, it isn't going to be allowed. And so their entire posture towards the Middle East and Israel would have to change for any type of deal to happen. And I don't know if that's possible for a regime that controls their entire people by fear and keeps the friends they have with that type of rhetoric. And so I think the idea that President Trump may end up using military force, maybe through Israel as a proxy, is probably just as real today or more real today than it's ever been.
Yeah, no kidding. And Lisa, you know, Iran in particular, they have this, or the Islamic Republic has this hate/fear over President Trump that really cannot be overstated. You know, their nuclear program is advancing so quickly, but this is a country also that the United States thwarted an assassination attempt against him. And now they're at this negotiating table. That's remarkable.
Yeah.
But, you know, President Trump took out Qasem Soleimani.
Right.
So
they're mad.
He sent the message, right? I mean, look, I think what is so funny is that we were told in 2016 that President Trump couldn't be trusted with the nuclear codes. And he turned out and is one of the best foreign policy presidents we have ever had because he sees the world so clearly. You know, there's that statement, you show me your friends and I'll show you who you are. For whatever reason, the Biden administration and Obama had this weird relationship with Iran. They might as well have sent a friendship bracelet to the supreme leader. You know, they try to coddle Iran. Somehow that would normalize their behavior. President Trump realizes when you're dealing with people like Iran, when you're dealing with countries and leaders like in Iran, you have to be tough. They have to fear you. And you look at what he did during his first administration, the maximum pressure campaign, those aggressive economic sanctions, also the diplomatic isolation, trying to reduce those oil exports to zero. You had at one point, Iran's inflation hitting 40% because of some of the actions of the Trump administration, and then also those Abraham Accords and bringing some of the Arab states and Israel together as well. So one of the best foreign policy presidents. Iran's in a weaker position now than they were in 2015. So I have faith that if a deal comes of this, it will be strong and in our favor.
Well, and Giano, the president actually supports the Iranian people. Trump supports them.
Yes.
And that's also notable.
Yes, and that's part of the reason why the leadership hates him. I mean, his people want freedom, and we got to keep in mind, 4 years ago, Iran wasn't in this position. They were weakened when President Trump left office. Joe Biden created this global issue on the world stage by unfreezing their money. That was a problem. The fact that some of the weapons that we have sent over to Ukraine have been sold to Hezbollah and many of these other factions that Iran has used as proxies to attack us, our ships, our soldiers, with no consequences, has created this environment on the world stage. So now President Trump is getting back into office, and it's really good to hear that the negotiations seem like they're going in a positive direction because there's now a leader in charge. And I think that's the message that many of the American people are realizing, that you got a strong leader that is feared across the world versus Sleepy Joe.
Well, we'll be watching what happens next Saturday.
He's probably sleeping right now. So it's past his bedtime, Joe Biden.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily.
Sleepy Joe, they say. Sleepy Joe, he's sleeping right now. They say he's sleeping right now, ladies and gentlemen. Is that true? Do you think Sleepy Joe is sleeping right now? Anyway, with that being said, what is Kamala Harris doing? A lot of people are saying Kamala Harris is coming back. She's coming back, ladies and gentlemen. She's coming back to run for 2028. Looks like. Check this out.
For more, let's bring in today's political panel, former Chief of Staff for the White House Press Office, Yemisi Egbewale, who's been so kind to me, by the way, over the years. Thank you for your time today. We're also joined by the CEO of American Frontier Strategies.
Hey, my boy.
And former GOP strategist. I guess I could say current, because you really do know GOP politics. That's the great Mahek Cook. I got to begin with you, Yemisi. You know the former VP pretty well. You've heard the talk. Is she running?
Well, I think time will tell on that. Look, California is the 5th largest economy in the world. She's worked in the Senate. She, of course, did 6 years in California as the Attorney General. She spent most of her life in public service. So this would be an easy decision for her to make if she did decide to run. She's kept up with speeches. And, of course, we saw the big speech in California where she spoke a lot about democracy. A lot of Democrats have seen her leadership through the year, of course, on January 6th, where she presided over the peaceful transfer of power. I think there's a lot of momentum if she ended up deciding to run here.
Okay, that's certainly one way to view it. Mahek, I'm imagining you're coming at this from a decidedly different perspective, in so much as, if nothing else, the American people have seen, heard, and been able to observe up close and personal the former VP for quite some time.
You're right, Kevin, and I don't think it was 107 days. Kamala Harris had 4 years under Joe Biden. She was coordinated and given this opportunity to run for office. And what is so sad today is she's addressing the American people saying, "I told you so." Well, what's shocking is the "told you so" should tell the American people that we rejected her vile moral values when she wanted DEI in school, transgenderism, boys and little girl sports, an open border that she was over. The borders are. We can't forget that. And you look at our country today, we're finally on the right track because the American people said enough is enough. We want our economy on track. We want our borders secure. So if Kamala Harris 2.0 comes back and says, "I'm going to secure that border and I'm going to make sure that DE&I isn't in schools," well, then Democrats have a place to play in politics. But right now, their party is abysmal. It's at 27% on most of these pollings, and that's coming from MSNBC. Well, I like to say the DNC, but it's MSNBC.
I've heard the president refer to that network in that way. Let me get you both to just sort of take a crack at this one. If I were to say to you, Yemisi, let me begin with you. If I were to say to you, Josh Shapiro, AOC, J.B. Pritzker, I'll throw George Clooney in there, and the vice president, former vice president, who's getting your vote and why? And I say that not looking for you to sort of make a case for them, but rather who do you think would be the most likely option for the Democrats in 28?
Look, I think the Democrats want somebody who talks about kitchen table issues.
Yeah.
Who talks about the economy and who has a lot of experience. And that might lead people to look for folks in the state. I would expand it beyond. I mean, we haven't mentioned Gretchen Whitmer. We haven't mentioned Governor Andy Beshear, who's a Democratic governor of a very red state.
Yep.
I think there are a lot more options, but I might go with George Clooney. I just saw him on Broadway.
Don't be surprised. I've been making that call for years and nobody believes me. We're having a little fun with it, but I think it's a fair question.
They know
if
just
not the
Clooney running
VP,
for
the former VP, then who is the standard bearer for the party? Maybe AOC. I don't know.
Well, no, I actually agree with both of you. Let it be George Clooney, because at least he had the backbone to stand up to the American people and say, the Joe Biden I saw shouldn't be running. And that's the truth and clarity we want today from the Democrat Party. So I'm going to stand with anybody who just wants to speak the truth.
Let me bring you this. Speaking truth, Bill Maher, fantastic comedian, I watch his show every week and have for years, talked about his conversation with President Trump, a visit to the White House. Listen to what he had to say. Get your reaction on the other side.
I never felt I had to walk on eggshells around him. And honestly, I voted for Clinton and Obama, but I would never feel comfortable talking to them the way I was able to talk with Donald Trump. That's just how it went down. Make of it what you will. Me, I feel it's emblematic of why the Democrats are so unpopular these days.
In other words, you should be able to have a conversation. Disagree, but disagree agreeably. Yamisi, I know you're like that, but I think he's making the point that the party needs to be more willing to have conversations and not take it to that next step.
Well, I think it's great that President Trump hosted Bill Maher for a private dinner with Kid Rock, Dana White. I would like to see the president show that same kind of graciousness that Bill Maher talked about. I would like to see him do that on a more public stage. I think that as somebody who worked in the last administration, I saw a lot of Republicans always come to events at the White House. And so that's been a time-honored tradition. But what we really need to see is a president who speaks to our neighbors like Canada and Mexico with that same kind of decorum and grace that Bill Maher said that he saw in private. I would like to see that on a more public scale.
And I think Bill even said as much, Mahek. I think he said the guy I talked to isn't the guy that's out there, sort of stirring the pot. 20 seconds.
Well, I think President Trump has to stir the pot because what's happened in the last 4 years hasn't worked. So he has to be tough with Canada and Mexico and many of these countries that have allowed for illegal immigrants and fentanyl to be dumped. But let's not judge a book by its cover. President Trump has continued to deliver for America, secure deals, and we're going to see more greatness. And I think he'd invite any Democrat. He invited Bill Maher. So anybody who wants to go to that White House, I guarantee you he'll say yes.
You know what? And it's funny. They all seem to forget. I've seen the pictures. I've got receipts. There were a lot of Democrats who loved Donald Trump before he was a Republican. And I guarantee you the second he's out of office, they'll be still buddying up with him. But great conversation, ladies. Appreciate that. Mahek and Yamisi, appreciate your time today.
Hey, Sean.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy, Genesis. With that being said, it is currently 9 p.m. I got a Zoom call I got to get on. We'll be back here between 11 and 12 a.m. If you're here, turn on your notification bell, subscribe to the channel, double tap your screen. It is currently 12. It's the 12th day of April 2025. Easter is near. We still have a lot to talk about today, but I got to go do other things. You guys are awesome. Instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on your dreams. Never give up on God. Believe in yourself. Believe in your dreams, and believe in Almighty God. All right. I believe the United States is the greatest country in the world. You don't have to think so, but this is what I truly believe because the United States has been kind to me. I started my family in the United States. I started like 2 different businesses in the United States, and God has been great. And I'm just grateful to be a United States citizen and to be able to exercise my right and use my voice. So thank you for being here. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for showing so much love. Also, we have memberships on the channel. If you want to join the memberships, it is $4.99. God bless y'all. Your boy gotta go. I will be back here. We've been streaming for 1 hour, 15 minutes. I will be back here, but I gotta go handle business, okay? Gotta go handle business, all right? Love you guys, man. Somebody says, are you legal? Nope, I'm not. Call ICE. ICE, ICE, baby. Call ICE. No. Call Tom Holman, okay? It's better to call Tom Holman. Tom Holman. Say, we got this dog. We watching YouTube. He's not legal. Get him off of here. He ain't legal. Call Tom Holman. Call Tom Holman. Matter of fact, I am probably gonna be at the White House for the Easter egg hunt. So ICE. Call ICE. Call ICE, baby. ICE, ICE, baby. Call Tom Holman, baby. Yeah. God bless y'all, man. God bless you. See you soon. Be back.